Let's talk more about this, shall we? Bring in our contributors, former Democratic Congressman for New York, Joe Crowley, also former Republican Congresswoman for Virginia, Barbara Comstock. Joe, let's start with you. You work closely with Nancy Pelosi. Your reaction to the news, and I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts here about just the influence she has left on the party and clearly on the nation.
Okay, when you think it's 20 years, almost to the day, that she first took the helm of the Democratic caucus as the leader of the caucus. And so it's been really 20 years of her leadership, and, you know, a very historic speakership. Some, including myself, who argue the most important speaker in the history of our country in many, many so historic ways, but her brilliance, her legislative skills are second to none. And just and her now opening up the opportunity for a new generation of leaders is quite remarkable, to say the least.
It really is. And Barbara, there have been a long line of speakers of the House, a lot of them very strong personalities, very tough leaders, and Nancy Pelosi is in that line, I think. And as somebody who was in Congress in opposition to her work, what's your assessment of her as you worked for her, with her, not for her, with her, against her in the House of Representatives? What's her legacy? What do you make of her?
Well, obviously, it's a very historic first. I actually, when I was a staffer in the 1990s, first got to see her because she was on our hall, and she worked with my boss, a very conservative Congressman Frank Wolf. They worked together on China human rights issues. So she has a long legacy, and obviously her leadership as the first woman speaker. She was always a real foil to the Democrat guys. I think she always was underestimated. I will note, I think that was the same suit that she had on when she ripped up famously Donald Trump's State of the Union speech that she wasn't too happy about. So, you know, I think she certainly does have a great legacy, even for those of us who, you know, actually, I got to work with her on sexual harassment legislation when I was there in my last year in Congress. So there's certainly things that women obviously work together on too.
Barbara, can I just follow up? She does seem to inspire really a level of animosity, even hatred, among many Republicans. Why is that?
Oh, well, you know, there's certainly, you know, misogyny in politics is a bipartisan problem. But I do think that that ugliness that you saw at the end of the campaign this year when her husband was injured, I think that really turned people against Republicans. I think that impacted the election. I think people saw that was really out of bounds. And so, you know, I think as Republicans are kind of licking their wounds and didn't get the seats that they thought they would, I think that's part of it. So in many ways, you know, Pelosi got the, you know, certainly that wasn't what she wanted to have happen, but that ugliness is something she spoke up against. And it was an unpleasant thing to see this year, I think, for all of us.
It's interesting you bring up the white suit. The two of you talk about that and what that represents. She not once mentioned Trump's name today. Not once.
She did come out, though.
That suit spoke.
Joe, why don't you weigh
Right,
in?
exactly. The suit said it all.
Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, I think Nancy's been about symbolism in many respects as well, but she is a true legislator, a masterful legislator, someone who I think you took risks to underestimate her. And she always came through, whether it was in the minority or the majority. She worked well with former speakers Boehner and Ryan to get must bills passed. So I think, you know, history is going to look incredibly kindly upon Nancy Pelosi. Maybe not every Republican, but I even think within Republican circles, there was a tremendous amount of respect for Nancy Pelosi. And this new, she'll be there to help these new leaders who are emerging now. She's going to be there to help guide them and give them some wisdom. I think it's going to be very, very helpful.
So, Barbara, Pelosi's decision does come as Republicans take a narrow lead in the House. Now, congressional Republicans saying they plan to push ahead with an investigation into President Biden's family, including his son Hunter, in the coming session. So despite some warnings from within the party, does that surprise you?
Well, I think you have some of the new Republicans, particularly from New York, who don't think that's a good idea, so they don't want to do that. I think it would behoove Republicans to focus on issues, the kitchen table issues, maybe investigate gas prices, inflation, grocery prices, maybe look at things on the border, which people are genuinely concerned about. But the Justice Department is already looking into Hunter Biden issues, and I think they could leave those alone and would do just fine without that.
And Joe, looking ahead now for the Democrats in minority with Nancy Pelosi there to advise them, as you say, what can they do to advance the president's agenda, the Democratic agenda, now that it looks like the Republicans are pretty much going to be in lockstep against anything? What do you think? Can anything get done by the Democrats in minority?
Well, Terry, I think a lot of that will really be dependent on the White House and the Senate, since they will still be in control in terms of the White House and the bully pulpit and the agenda, and certainly Chuck Schumer in the Senate. They'll be looking to the House Democrats for help as well. Sometimes it's not about the legislation that passes. It's about how much support there's for the Democratic minority in the passage of legislation that will indicate whether this is really bipartisan or not. When it comes to really the investigations, I think Republicans really need to be smart about how they move forward. I think the American people are tired of the name calling. They're tired of the investigations, to some degree as well. They want us to get on to address the issues, as Barbara said, of concern to the American people. I think Hakeem Jeffries and Catherine Clark and Pete Aguilar, they're part of that new generation. I think they have a lot to show. I think that Hakeem Jeffries is one of the great orators in the House today, a very, very smart gentleman from Brooklyn and a very dear and close friend. And I wish him Godspeed and all the best.
Absolutely. It does seem, maybe it's just the fact that there's going to be a new Congress, that a glimmer of hope that we're putting the age of just insane animosity and insane hatred across the aisles. But maybe that's just wishful thinking. I don't know. Joe Crowley, Barbara Comstock, thanks very much for your inside perspective on this. Appreciate it.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.